Hey there, it's Jennifer McGuire for twopeasinabucket.com. This is the last week of the Thinking Inking class, and I thought I'd focus on some more ideas for some of the favorite weeks that we've had here at Thinking Inking. These are the cards that we're doing today, and it's going to talk more about techniques for distress ink. But first, I wanted to share with you a quick inking tool tip. As I've mentioned before, for using the inking tool with distress inks, you want to use foam, not felt, definitely foam. And the people have talked about how the Velcro falls off their inking tool. I just put a staple in there with a staple gun, and then you can easily keep your Velcro from coming off the tool. This is a tip that Tim Holtz gave me. And also, when you go to peel off your foam, make sure you tuck your thumb under the blue foam to pull it off, and you'll have no problems. Okay, the first new technique I wanted to show you was Crayon Resist, and that's what I did with these white spots and Google Doodles in the back of that blue card. So I'm going to start with, I've just stamped this image with black ink, and I'm going and adding some highlighting with a good old white crayon. I figured my kids steal my supplies often enough that it's time that I got payback, so I just grabbed one of their white crayons and went to town. So you can do this on either cardstock or glossy paper. It does work better on glossy paper, but I did it here on cardstock since everybody has that on hand. After I've gone and added some white coloring with the white crayon, I'm going back and applying a heavy layer of distress ink with my inking tool. And remember, you use the foam and you start off of the paper and work onto it, and that helps get even coverage without big splotches of color. And you can see where the crayon was white, it is leaving a resist mark, so you get these little white spots or white doodles in the background. This is really fun and easy to do, and a great way to add kind of the look of dimension to your project. And here's a close-up of the final results. You can see I did some along with the stamped image on the bottom left, and then just little dots throughout the grid. Next up is a white pigment resist. This is another thing that you can do with plain old cardstock, and it's very, very subtle, and that's what I did with the background on this card. Now, I first stamp with a white pigment ink. If you want this to be more intense, you emboss it with powder, but you can also get a more subtle resist by using just white pigment ink and heating it with a heat gun. I use Snowcap, which is a white pigment ink from Ranger, and it's really a good color. So now you'll barely see this, and then I'm going to heat it with a heat gun, because if you don't do that, it'll just kind of smear around. So now you're going to apply lots of ink over it using your inking tool, and you can see you get this ghost-like image kind of floating in the background, which is a lot of fun. But again, if you want this to pop out more, be sure to emboss it with embossing powder. And then you can see a close-up of what this looks like here. It's just a great way to make your own subtle background paper when you've got some busy things going on a card. Now this last one is, I don't know what to call it, so I just call it inked crease coloring. And I've done these, you see those green stripes along the background there? I just did that with creasing and inking. So I took this background that was stamped with black ink, again this is just white cardstock, and I smeared my broken china distress ink across it. Again, you want to use distress ink for this technique because distress ink does fun things when it comes in contact with water. It spreads, and so we need that for this technique. So I'm just putting folds along my distress inked background to kind of go with the pattern that I've stamped on it, and I'm rubbing some green Shabby Shutters distress ink along these creases. And I'm just going to do a few different folds like this so that I can have some lines of colors. You can make your own background without a stamp doing this too. Now that I've gotten some lines, I'm going to just spray this like crazy with water and let it sit. And the green ink will just start to spread naturally because that's what distress ink does. And you'll get this pretty kind of background with all these different shades and shadows. It's really nice in real life. Now I wanted to give you a tip on coloring this flower. I showed you before, but I thought this was a good example. I'm just inking this flower with distress ink, and this is a fast way to add shaded color to a project or to a stamped image if you don't want to take the time to do colored pencils or Copic markers or whatever. So what I'm doing here is I'm just covering it with dried marigold orange distress ink completely with color, and then I'm going to go back with my broken china and add a little bit of shading to the edges of the flower. And you can see by working off of the stamped image and then working onto it, I can add some soft color to the tips, and this gives great shadowing without taking a lot of time. And then I just cut this out, and here you can see what it looks like afterwards. Then I went back with some white pen and highlighted on my flowers and added some frosted lace stickles to the center. So there are lots of different things that you can do with distress inks for backgrounds. I hope this leaves you feeling a little more inspired. Be sure to come back later this week for more favorite ideas.